Life before the affair was a tapestry of mundane joys and the comforting hum of routine. My name is David, and I was living what many would consider a perfect life. I had a beautiful wife named Laura, a bright and energetic 7-year-old son named Ethan, and a modest but cozy home in a friendly neighborhood. Our lives revolved around our son's interests, and one of his passions was playing the piano. That's where the piano teacher, Mr. Collins, entered our lives. Mr. Collins was a man in his late 30s, tall with an easy smile and a way of explaining things that made learning enjoyable. I admired his dedication to his craft and the way he connected with Ethan. He had a natural talent for making even the most complex pieces seem approachable for a child. Laura and I often praised him for his patience and skill, and I felt grateful that Ethan had such a wonderful mentor. My relationship with Laura was solid, or so I thought. We had our share of ups and downs, like any couple, but I believed we were a team navigating the challenges of parenthood together. We would often reminisce about our early days, the laughter we shared, and the dreams we had for the future. I trusted her completely. There was no reason not to. Our lives were intertwined in a way that felt unbreakable. However, as I look back, I realized that I was living in a blissful ignorance. The signs were there, but I was too caught up in my day-to-day life to notice. Laura had begun spending more time with Ethan's piano practice, often extending their lessons under the pretense of helping him prepare for a recital. I thought it was just her enthusiasm for our son's education, a sign of her support and love for him. The more time they spent together, the less I saw of her in our home. She would come home late, sometimes forgetting to call, and I found myself chalking it up to her commitment to Ethan's musical growth. As the weeks passed, I began to feel a nagging sense of unease. The laughter that used to fill our house seemed to wane, replaced by an unfamiliar silence. I noticed Laura was more distracted, her mind seemingly elsewhere even when she was physically present. I tried to brush it off, thinking it was just the stress of balancing work and family. I was busy with my job at the marketing firm, and perhaps I had been neglecting our relationship a bit too. In hindsight, I see now that my complacency allowed cracks to form in our marriage. I should have been more attentive, more aware of the signs that something was amiss. But I was a husband who trusted his wife, a father who wanted the best for his son, and a man who believed that love could withstand any test. Little did I know that the very fabric of that love was about to be torn apart. The piano teacher, once a figure of admiration, would soon become a symbol of betrayal. I had no idea that the person I trusted to guide my son in music was also guiding my wife into a world of infidelity. As I reflect on that time, I realize how naive I was, living in a bubble of trust that would soon shatter. But for now, I was blissfully unaware, believing that life would continue on its predictable path. I was about to learn that life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect it. The moment of discovery came like a bolt from the blue, shattering the fragile peace I had clung to for so long. It was an ordinary Saturday afternoon, one of those days where the sun streamed through the windows and filled our home with warmth. Ethan was at a friend's birthday party, and Laura had mentioned she would be running errands. I had planned to take advantage of the quiet time to catch up on some work and perhaps enjoy a little solitude. As I sat in my home office, the hum of my computer the only sound in the house, I noticed my phone buzzing on the desk. It was a message from a number I didn't recognize. Curiosity piqued. I opened it to find a series of texts that made my heart race. They were exchanges between Laura and Mr. Collins, filled with flirty emojis, inside jokes, and affectionate terms that made my stomach churn. My heart sank as the realization hit me like a freight train. They were having an affair. I felt as though the ground beneath me had vanished. My mind raced, spiraling into a chaotic whirlwind of emotions. How could she do this? Did she really think I wouldn't find out? I had trusted her completely, and now this betrayal felt like a knife twisting in my gut. I could hardly breathe as I reread the messages, my hands shaking. The evidence was undeniable. There they were, exchanging intimate words that should never have left the confines of our marriage. In that moment, I was consumed by a mixture of anger and disbelief. I felt like a fool, a man who had built his life on trust, only to have it shattered by the very person I loved most. My thoughts turned toward Ethan. How could she do this to him? I envisioned his innocent face, oblivious to the chaos swirling around him. The pain of betrayal was not just mine, it was our son, as well. As I paced the room, my mind raced through every memory I had of Laura and Mr. Collins together. The piano lessons, the long conversations after practice, the way she would smile a little too brightly whenever he walked through the door. It all started to make sense. The late nights, the secretive phone calls, the way she would guard her phone like it was a treasure. I had seen the signs, but I had chosen to ignore them, convincing myself that everything was fine. I felt a heat rising in my chest, a burning desire for revenge. I wanted to confront her, to make her feel the pain she had caused me, but a part of me hesitated. I knew I needed to gather more evidence, to confront her with the truth rather than accusations. I was not going to make the mistake of letting my emotions dictate my actions. I was going to plan my next steps carefully. I decided to follow her that evening. I needed to see for myself what was happening, to witness the betrayal firsthand. I felt like a voyeur in my own life, but I couldn't help it. I had to know. I waited until she left the house, claiming she was going out for groceries. I grabbed my keys, heart pounding, and drove to the local cafe where I knew Mr. Collins often worked on weekends. As I parked and stepped inside, I felt a mix of fear and determination. I scanned the room, searching for any sign of them. My heart raced as I finally spotted them. In the corner, huddled together, their bodies leaning in too close. Laura was laughing, her head thrown back, and Mr. Collins was looking at her with an intensity that made my blood boil. It was a scene that should have belonged to a romantic movie, but for me, it was my worst nightmare come to life. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. I stood frozen for a moment, the reality of the situation settling in. I was witnessing the culmination of their deceit, the betrayal that had been brewing right under my nose. My hands clenched into fists, and I fought the urge to storm over and confront them on the spot. Instead, I quietly slipped out of the cafe, my mind racing with thoughts of how I would confront Laura. The drive home felt like an eternity. I was filled with a sense of purpose, but also a deep sorrow. I was losing my wife, the woman I had built a life with, and the knowledge that she had chosen someone else over me was a wound that would take a long time to heal. I knew I wouldn't be able to let this go unpunished. I needed to make her face the consequences of her actions, and I would ensure that Mr. Collins would never come between us again. As I pulled into our driveway, I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the confrontation that awaited. This was just the beginning, and I was determined to see it through. The moment I stepped into the house, I felt the weight of the world pressing down on my shoulders. The air was thick with tension, an unspoken understanding that something was about to shatter. Laura was in the kitchen, her back turned to me as she washed dishes. The rhythmic sound of water splashing against porcelain filled the silence, and I took a moment to gather my thoughts. The woman who had once been my partner, my confidant, was now the source of my deepest betrayal. "Laura," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. She turned, surprise flickering across her face before it settled into a neutral expression. "We need to talk." Her brow furrowed slightly, and I watched as she wiped her hands on a dish towel, her body language shifting into something defensive. "What's wrong, David?" I took a deep breath, my heart racing. "I know about you and Mr. Collins." The tension in the room snapped like a rubber band stretched too far. Her eyes widened, and for a fleeting moment I saw a flicker of panic. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice feigning innocence, but I could see the cracks forming in her facade. "I saw the texts, Laura. I followed you today. I saw you with him." My voice was firm, but inside I was a storm of emotions, anger, betrayal, confusion. "How could you do this to us?" To Ethan. The silence that followed was deafening. Laura's expression shifted from surprise to defiance, and I could see the gears turning in her mind as she tried to formulate a response. "David, please, it's not what you think." My anger flared, and I took a step closer, my voice rising. "Not what I think. You're having an affair with our son's piano teacher. What else could it possibly be?" Her eyes darted away from mine, and I could see the guilt written all over her face. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she finally said, her voice trembling. It just happened. We connected over music, and I thought it was innocent at first." "Innocent?" I scoffed, shaking my head in disbelief. "You thought it was innocent to share intimate moments with another man while you're married to me, while you're raising our son?" She crossed her arms defensively, her posture rigid. "You don't understand. You've been so busy with work, and I felt lonely. Mr. Collins was there for me when I needed someone to talk to." Her words felt like a slap to the face. "So you decided to sleep with him, that's your solution." I could feel the rage bubbling beneath the surface, and I struggled to keep my voice steady. "What about our marriage? What about our family?" "I didn't want to hurt you," she pleaded, her voice softening. "I thought I could keep it separate. I didn't want to destroy what we have." "Destroy what we have?" I echoed, incredulous. "You've already done that, Laura. You've chosen him over us. You've betrayed my trust, and you've betrayed Ethan's trust. You're not just hurting me, you're hurting our son." Tears began to well in her eyes, but I wasn't about to let her manipulation sway me. "I need you to be honest with me," I said, my voice low and steady. "Do you love him?" The question hung in the air, heavy with implications. She hesitated, and in that moment I knew the answer. I don't know," she finally admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. That admission felt like a dagger to my heart. I had fought for our marriage, for our family, only to discover that she was willing to throw it all away for a fleeting connection. "You do know," I repeated, disbelief flooding my voice. "You don't know if you love the man you've been cheating on your husband with." Laura looked down, shame washing over her. "I made a mistake, David. I'm sorry. I was weak." "Sorry isn't enough," I snapped, frustration boiling over. "You've crossed a line that can't be uncrossed. I can't just forget this. I can't pretend it didn't happen." "I want to make it right," she said, desperation creeping into her tone. "I'll end it with him. I'll do anything to fix this." "Fix it?" I shook my head, feeling a bitter laugh escape my lips. "How do you fix a broken trust? How do you fix a heart that's been shattered? You can't just sweep it under the rug and pretend nothing happened." Laura stepped closer, reaching out for me, but I recoiled. "Don't," I warned. "Don't touch me. You've lost that right." Tears streamed down her face, and for a moment I felt a flicker of sympathy, but I quickly extinguished it. I had to be strong. I wouldn't allow her to manipulate my emotions any longer. "I need time to think," I said, my voice cold. "And you need to figure out what you truly want." With that, I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there, tears in her eyes and guilt etched on her face. I felt a mix of relief and devastation wash over me. The confrontation was necessary, but it left a bitter taste in my mouth. I had exposed the truth, but the path ahead was fraught with uncertainty. I knew I had to make a decision about our future, and it wouldn't be an easy one. But one thing was clear: I wouldn't let this betrayal go unanswered. I would ensure that there were consequences for her actions, both for Laura and for Mr. Collins. In the days following the confrontation, I felt like I was living in a fog. Each morning, I would wake up and feel the weight of betrayal pressing down on my chest, suffocating me. Laura and I coexisted in the same house, but our once warm and inviting home had turned into a cold battleground. Conversations were clipped and tense, filled with the painful remnants of our shattered trust. Ethan remained blissfully unaware, and I was determined to keep it that way for as long as possible. Laura had made promises to end things with Mr. Collins, to fight for our marriage, but her words felt hollow. I found it hard to believe that she could simply switch off her feelings, especially after witnessing the way she had looked at him. The thought of them together haunted me. I replayed the images of their secret meetings in my mind, the way he had held her gaze, the laughter they shared. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was losing her, that hour. Marriage was slipping through my fingers like sand. One evening, after another tense dinner, I found myself in our bedroom, staring at the wall. I had decided that I needed to take action. I couldn't sit back and allow this to fester. I needed to confront Mr. Collins, to make him understand the depth of his betrayal and the consequences of his actions. He was not just an outsider. He had invaded my family, and it was time for him to face the music. The next day, I drove to the music school where Mr. Collins taught. My heart raced as I parked in front of the building. the weight of what I was about to do heavy on my shoulders. I felt a mix of anger and determination, a desire for justice that overshadowed my fear. As I walked through the doors, I could feel the eyes of the other teachers and students on me, but I brushed it off. I had a singular purpose. I found him in a small practice room, sitting at the piano, his fingers gliding over the keys. The sound was beautiful, but it felt discordant in my ears. I knocked on the door, and he looked up, surprise evident on his face. "David," he said, standing up, "what are you doing here? Can we talk?" I asked, my voice steady but laced with an underlying tension. "Sure, is everything okay?" he replied, his brow furrowing with concern. I stepped into the room, closing the door behind me. "No, everything is not okay. You know why I'm here." His expression shifted from concern to defensiveness. "I don't think I understand what you mean." I took a deep breath, controlling the anger that threatened to boil over. "You've been sleeping with my wife. You've crossed a line, and I want you to understand the consequences of your actions." His face paled slightly, and for a moment I saw a flicker of regret. "David, I didn't mean for it to happen. It was a mistake." "A mistake?" I interrupted, my voice rising. "You think this is just a mistake? You've destroyed my family, my marriage. You've betrayed not just me, but our son. Do you have any idea how much pain you've caused?" He opened his mouth to respond, but I continued, not giving him a chance to deflect. "You need to end this with Laura. You need to leave her alone. She's made her mistakes, but you're not innocent in this. You've preyed on a vulnerable woman, and I won't stand for it." "I care about her," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's complicated." "Complicated?" I scoffed. "You think it's complicated? You're a grown man. You had a choice, and you chose to betray a family. You need to own that." I stepped closer, my anger boiling over. "I'm not going to let you ruin my life or my son's life any further. If you don't end this now, I will make sure everyone knows what you've done. I'll go to the school administration, to the parents, to anyone who will listen. I will expose this affair, and I will make sure you face the consequences." His eyes widened, and I could see the fear creeping in. "David, please. I never wanted it to come to this. I'll talk to Laura. I'll end it." "Good," I said, taking a step back, feeling a sense of satisfaction wash over me. "You need to understand that this isn't just about you two. There are real people involved, and your actions have consequences. I will not allow this to go on any longer." With that, I turned and walked out of the room, feeling a mix of triumph and sadness. I had confronted the man who had betrayed my family, but the reality of the situation still weighed heavily on me. I didn't want to play the role of the villain, but I knew I had to protect my son and myself. When I returned home, I found Laura sitting on the couch, her expression unreadable. I took a deep breath and sat down across from her. "I talked to Mr. Collins," I said, my voice steady. Her eyes widened, and I could see the fear in her gaze. "What did you say?" "I told him to end things with you. I made it clear that this affair cannot continue." I watched her reaction closely, searching for any sign of remorse. "And what did he say?" she asked, her voice trembling. "He admitted to caring about you, but I made it clear that he needs to leave you alone. This stops now." "Laura," she looked down, her face a mix of shame and relief. "Thank you for doing that," she said softly. "Thank you," I echoed, disbelief flooding my voice. "You should be thanking yourself for not making this worse. You need to understand that this is your last chance. I don't know if I can ever trust you again, but if you want to fix this, you need to take it seriously." Laura nodded, tears welling in her eyes as she wiped them away. "I will. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right." I didn't respond. I was exhausted, emotionally drained from the confrontation and the weight of the past few days. I knew that the road ahead would be difficult, filled with challenges and uncertainty. But one thing was clear: I wouldn't let this betrayal define us. It was time to rebuild, but first, we had to face the consequences of what had happened. The days turned into weeks, and the aftermath of my confrontation with Mr. Collins began to settle like dust over our lives. Laura had made an effort to change. She was more present, more engaged with Ethan and with me, but I struggled to shake the feeling that the trust between us had been irreparably damaged. The echoes of betrayal lingered in every room of our home, a constant reminder of what had transpired. I had made it clear to Laura that the affair with Mr. Collins was over, and she seemed genuinely remorseful. but every time I saw her pick up her phone, a knot tightened in my stomach. I knew I couldn't keep living like this, constantly on edge, waiting for the next betrayal. I needed to take control of the situation and ensure that my family was protected from any further harm. One evening, after putting Ethan to bed, I sat down with Laura in the living room. The atmosphere was heavy, filled with unspoken words and lingering tension. "We need to talk about this," I said, breaking the silence. "About what?" she asked, her voice cautious. "About what happens next. We can't just pretend that everything is fine now. We need to establish some boundaries, and I need to know how you plan to rebuild our trust." Laura looked down, her fingers fidgeting nervously. "I understand. I know I've broken your trust, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to fix this. I want to go to couples therapy. I think it would help us work through our issues together." I considered her proposal. Therapy could be a useful tool, but I was wary of diving into it without first addressing the root of the problem. "I think therapy is a good idea, but it's not a magic fix. We need to be honest with each other, and you need to be completely transparent with me about everything." "I promise I will," she said, her eyes pleading. "I'll share my phone with you, my messages. I want you to feel secure again." "Okay," I nodded, still feeling a mix of skepticism and hope. "But I need to know that you're committed to this. We can't just go through the motions. I need to see real change." "I will show you," she replied, her voice firm. "I want to prove to you that I can be the wife you deserve." As we discussed our plans for therapy, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe we could work through this together, but there was still one loose end I needed to tie up: Mr. Collins. I couldn't shake the feeling that he was still a threat, even if Laura had promised to end things. I needed to make sure he understood that he was out of our lives for good. The following day, I decided to pay him a visit at the music school once again. I walked in with a sense of purpose, ready to confront him one last time. As I approached his office, I took a deep breath, preparing myself for the conversation ahead. When he saw me, his expression shifted from surprise to apprehension. "David," he said, his voice cautious, "what's going on?" "I wanted to make sure we're on the same page," I said, my tone firm. "You and Laura are done. I expect you to keep your distance from her, from my family. I won't tolerate any further contact." He nodded, looking genuinely remorseful. "I understand. I never meant to hurt you or your family. I got caught up in something I shouldn't have, and I regret it." I studied his face, searching for any sign of insincerity. "This isn't just about you and Laura. You've affected my son's life too, and I won't let that happen again. If I find out that you've reached out to her in any way, I will make sure everyone knows about your affair." "I won't," he promised, his voice earnest. "I'll respect your wishes. I've learned my lesson." With that, I turned to leave, feeling a sense of closure wash over me. I had made my point clear, and I hoped it would be enough to protect my family from further harm. I would not allow Mr. Collins to disrupt our lives any longer. When I returned home, I found Laura waiting for me with a hopeful expression on her face. "How did it go?" she asked, her eyes shining with anticipation. "I made it clear that he's out of our lives for good," I said, trying to hide the tension in my voice. "Now it's up to us to move forward." She smiled, a mixture of relief and gratitude. "Thank you for doing that. I know it's been hard for you, but I appreciate your strength." As we began to navigate this new chapter together, I found myself reflecting on the lessons I had learned. Trust is fragile, easily shattered by betrayals that can leave deep scars, but it can also be rebuilt, brick by brick, through honesty and commitment. I was determined to make our marriage work, to create a stronger foundation for our family. We scheduled our first therapy session, and although I felt apprehensive, I also felt a glimmer of hope. Perhaps we could find our way back to each other, back to the love we once shared. It wouldn't be easy, but I believed it was worth the effort. In the weeks that followed, we began to peel back the layers of our relationship, addressing the issues that had led to Laura's infidelity. It was an arduous process, filled with tears and difficult conversations, but I could see the commitment in her eyes. She was willing to fight for our marriage, and I was too. As we worked through our challenges, I realized that this experience had changed me. I had learned the importance of communication, of being present for one another, and of never taking love for granted. While the scars of betrayal would always remain, I was determined to turn this painful chapter into an opportunity for growth. And as I looked at my wife, I saw the flicker of hope in her eyes, a promise that we could emerge from this stronger than before. As I sit here reflecting on the tumultuous journey we've endured, I can't help but feel a mixture of relief and caution. The past few months have been a whirlwind of emotions, revelations, and painful truths. Laura and I have been through the ringer, and while I can't say that everything is perfect now, I can say that we are rebuilding. Slowly but surely. The therapy sessions have been a revelation. At first, they felt like an uphill battle. We would sit across from each other, our therapist guiding us through the tangled web of emotions that had built up over the years. I often felt anger bubbling beneath the surface, but I also experienced moments of vulnerability that took me by surprise. Laura, too, was learning to express herself in ways she never had before. Each session peeled back layers of hurt, fear, and misunderstanding, and in their place, we began to find a deeper connection. One of the most profound lessons I learned was about the fragility of trust. Trust is not just given, it's nurtured and maintained through actions and honesty. Laura had broken that trust, but she was also willing to fight to restore it. I realized that I had a role to play in this as well. I couldn't just wallow in my pain. I had to actively work towards forgiveness and healing. It was a challenge, but I was determined to make it work. Ethan remains blissfully unaware of the turmoil that threatened to tear our family apart. We've maintained a semblance of normalcy for him, ensuring that his childhood remains filled with laughter and love. I often watch him play the piano, the same instrument that had once been a source of pain, and I feel a swell of pride. He's talented, and I'm grateful that Mr. Collins is no longer a part of that world. I've taken over Ethan's piano practice, and while I'm no virtuoso, I enjoy spending quality time with him, creating our own little musical moments. As Laura and I continue to work through our issues, I find myself reflecting on the nature of love and commitment. It's easy to take relationships for granted, to assume that love will always be there. But this experience taught me that love requires effort, understanding, and a willingness to confront difficult truths. It's not enough to simply say, "I love you." You must show it through your actions, day in and day out. There are still moments of doubt, nights when I wake up and wonder if I can truly trust Laura again. But I remind myself that healing is a process. There will be ups and downs, and it's okay to feel vulnerable. I've learned to communicate my fears with Laura, and she's become more receptive to my needs. It's a delicate dance, but we're learning, and that gives me hope for the future. As I look back on the man I was before all of this, naive, trusting, perhaps a bit complacent, I can see how much I've grown. I've become more introspective, more aware of my own needs and boundaries. I've learned to stand up for myself and to demand respect in my relationship. This experience has shaped me in ways I never anticipated, and while the pain of betrayal will always linger, it has also forged a stronger sense of self. Laura and I continue to navigate our relationship with caution, but there's a new depth to our connection. We've made a pact to communicate openly, to share our thoughts and feelings without fear of judgment. We're not just partners, we're allies in this journey of rebuilding. I've seen her fight for our marriage, and in turn, I'm fighting for it too. As I reflect on everything that has transpired, I'm reminded that life is unpredictable. It can throw challenges our way when we least expect it, testing the very foundations of our relationships. But it's how we respond to those challenges that defines us. I have chosen to embrace this journey, to learn from the pain, and to grow alongside the woman I love. In the end, I believe that love can endure, even through the darkest of times. It's not about forgetting the past, it's about learning from it and using those lessons to create something stronger. Our family may have been shaken to its core, but as we stand together, united in our commitment to one another, I can see a future filled with hope. And so I close this chapter of my life with a sense of gratitude for the lessons learned, for the love that remains, and for the journey that lies ahead. We are not defined by our mistakes. We are defined by our willingness to forgive, to grow, and to love again. In this ever-evolving story of our lives, I am determined to write a new narrative, one filled with trust, resilience, and a deeper understanding of what it means to be a family.